Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Today, our guest is legendary sports handicapper Roxy Roxborough, who's on several lists of the top sports guy in various century, a couple different ones so far. The Roxy Roxborough, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Well, thanks. You're welcome.
How did you get started related to sports, and when was this?
Well, I was a bad blackjack counter. I'm one of the few blackjack counters that didn't make millions, according to what I've read. I must have been one of the few.
I'm another one.
Okay.
Well, I didn't make millions from blackjack.
Okay. And I was a horse player. And in 1972, I went broke at Del Mar. I had a couple $100 and some gasoline credit cards. I drove across the desert to Las Vegas and decided, this is probably where I ought to be. And I had bet sports before in Reno and illegally in Vancouver, BC, where I also was a part-time football bookmaker. And I just decided, I need to be in Las Vegas.
So somewhere along the way, you started the Las Vegas Sporting Consultants? Is that
Yes, Las Vegas Sports Consultants. What happened was I was betting and I was helping some places in Reno with the line. Of course, there was no communication between Reno and Las Vegas at that time. So arbitrageurs were just picking off the line because they got no updates. Chris Andrews at the Club Calneva, who at the time was the youngest sports director in Nevada, asked me to help him with the line. And then I started reporting the line for a lot of places in northern Nevada. But that didn't make me an odds maker. They just made me a guy reporting the line. But when the Stardust changed hands, when the mob was out, and then the Boyd Group came in, Scott Shetler asked me to be their odds maker, and that changed my life. So I had to stop betting. I guess that was like 84, 85. And then I had to stop. I decided, I have to stop betting because this would be a big conflict of interest. I said, I'll try it for a couple of years and see if there's a business here.
So you must have had a pretty strong math background, right?
Well, the last time I went to school for math, I think I had one semester algebra in grade 10. Now, the one thing I always thought about math is you really need to ask the questions. Somebody else can do the answers for you. The hard part's asking the questions. And I always had people working for me when I was a sports bettor, and when we had Las Vegas Sports Consultants, and when I was a bookmaker that were doing math for me. Usually full-time math guys. Las Vegas Sports Consultants, we hired some fantastic statistics and probability background people, Mike Roden and Joel Brewster, who did this type of work. I will say my father was a Harvard MBA, and he did have a business background, numbers, and he was a financial troubleshooter. So I probably inherited a lot of that from him, plus also saw the way he ran businesses. But I don't have a math background.
So nowadays, top sports bettors are making 7 figures a year. Mm-hmm. And back then, the lines were so much worse than they are now. Mm-hmm. But was it really hard to get a lot of money down? Or, because the consulting turned out to be a much better option, right?
Yes. Well, inflation adjusted, maybe the limits back then weren't that bad when I look back on it. I think, sure, everybody knows more now, but at the time they didn't know as much. So when you're an odds maker, you're always going to be a step behind the players, always. The question is, how far?
A step
are you
behind
be
the best
them?
Players.
What?
A step behind the best players.
Right. And the question is, how far do the books want to be behind them? As long as they're winning, they can tolerate a little loss, right, from the best players, and they can take direction from them. But when they start to determine their bottom line, then the odds have to get better. And it's a moving target. It's a constant battle.
Still is.
It is. Yeah, that hasn't changed. I mean, people are more sophisticated now, but in their approach. But the battle between bookmakers and the bettors it's ongoing, and it's a moving target.
So how is bookmaking today different than it was umpteen years ago?
Well, some of to me, it should be practically all algorithmic. Now, I know that a lot of my friends that are in this business are going to hate that because, they still like to move the lines themselves and they like their cadre of guys to do it. But the books have brought this on themselves by offering so many propositions, so many games, that they can't manually be moving all the odds efficiently. They just can't be doing it. There's a college basketball Saturday, 146 college basketball games in one day. I mean, they brought that on themselves, and if they want to do, the players are certainly making algorithmic lines and algorithmic bets. So the days of guys just sitting there and saying, move Penn State to 4, or, Ohio Wesleyan -2 or something like that. To me, they're falling too far behind.
But that would put, I would think, a lot of people out of business, right? If you can just have the computer do it automatically for you.
Well, you always need oversight.
Sure.
Everybody needs oversight. And there's always people have to make decisions on what limits are for what people. But basically, the idea of the sportsbook operator hasn't been a growth occupation for a long time. There's been massive consolidation in the business. There's going to be a lot more consolidation over the next 5 years in the other states. There's not going to be that many players when it's over.
Really? You think?
I don't think so. I predicted 2 years ago that probably you'd end up with FanDuel, DraftKings, and William Hill, and it turns out William Hill is now Caesars. So maybe you put in MGM in there, you end up with 4 players, and maybe one of the muck will come out and stay around a while. Maybe not.
What do you think about the way they throw players out who know that Tuesday comes after Monday?
Yeah. See, that's always been going on. It's just that social media now magnifies it. Players are offended when their limits are cut. This has been going on since the 70s. Unless you can do something for the bookmaker, why should he open every day to make a living for you? It's a game where you have to give him something so you can get something. It's the old Zig Ziglar thing. You can get everything you want in life if you just help other people get what they want. And just trashing people online is not exactly the way to get more money down. I can't tell you all the ways to get down for extra money because then I would lose that myself. But Billy Walter's been doing it for years. He's managed to coax. Here's the sharpest handicapper around, or one of the sharpest around, but definitely the sharpest bettor around, and has managed to negotiate higher limits with sportsbooks, even though he's beating their brains in. So that's his gig. I have my own. Most all the pros have their own.
So you're actively betting now? Now that you don't have a conflict of interest?
Yeah. Well, since my retirement, I've only been betting English football and baseball. And who knows about baseball this year? I can happily spend my time doing something.
So you're not going to Del Mar anymore?
Oh, I go. I've had a box there for 20-something years, but I go there to drink more than bet.
Well, there are cheaper places to drink if you.
Well, there are.
Yeah, but you get to watch the horses run around. Del Mar is beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of things in life. It's a sort of an old men's club. Instead of going to the card room or hanging around a pool hall, we hang out at the racetrack. Dinosaurs.
So guests on this show in the past, Ed Miller and Matt Davidow, are supposed to be the best at coming up with lines for in-stream betting, and they're selling their lines to a lot of the big sportsbook. Mm-hmm. What is the state of that?
Well, I think they're on the right track. If you look to previous countries, they've done more business in game than they've done before the game. U.S. sports betting isn't to that extent yet, but I think in a few years it will be. Not only that, I think micro bets will take over, where people are just betting $1 or $2, but they're churning it incredibly fast and losing at a high rate on like every pitch of baseball or every shot in golf. I think that's the future, is micro bets. That's all has to be algorithmic. And I think these guys are on the right track. It's a big learning curve, and like everything, it's a moving target. But I think that's the future. I remember, well, this is sort of esoteric, but cricket betting really took off with in-game wagering, because the one-day games are 7 hours long, and the test matches can go from anywhere from 3 to 5 days. So that was sort of a no-brainer. But it's happened in soccer too, which I didn't see at first coming. But now so what happens when in-game betting takes over? There's no reason to have to bet at post time. If you can bet any time in the game, you don't have to rush home, or you don't have to rush down to a book or get on your phone at 1 o'clock to bet an NFL game, because as soon as they kick off, it's going to be the same price. It's just going to keep going and going and going. And obviously that is going to be bigger betting than the pregame stuff.
You mentioned just before we started that everything changed when the computer group started in the late 70s. So can you talk a little bit about that, what happened there, and how it really changed the landscape?
They had a better way to evaluate strength of schedule than we did. It showed up in college football for a lot of people just because the limits are higher. But really, but there's a lot of offsetting action in college football. It showed up for us mostly in college basketball. So we were dabbling around with computers. First computer was a Tandy TRS 80 called a Trash 80. And we were thrilled that we could get somebody to write a program to look at. The first thing I wanted to see was NBA scheduling. I wanted to see what happened to teams that played a third night on the road, consecutive nights. We knew it was bad. I just wanted to see how bad it was. I couldn't believe how bad it was. Eventually, the league had to do away with it. Then we started parsing out NBA scheduling for the whole season. And then I realized that we need full-time programmers. And
what year was that?
Well, that was in the mid-'80s. The one thing the computer group that's when we first started with that. The computer group actually benefited from a big vacuum between when Bob Martin had legal problems and he had to leave Las Vegas, and the Stardust at that time was rudderless for making the odds, which the other books were copying. And they bet into some soft lines. Now, when Scotty Shuttler came in and I worked with a couple other guys, the lines got better, so they had to get better. And they did get better.
And now it's just been an arms race ever since.
That's true. That's probably where it first started. There's no incentive in life to do more work until there's a reason to do it, right? So if the books are always winning whatever their percentage is, right? They're not going to be proactive. They're going to be reactive, just like they've always been. One baseball season, I tried to be preactive. I was convinced with computer information that we were weighting pitchers way too much, about 75 to 80% of the line, and that we shouldn't. So we started the season with the new formula I had, and we got battered, not with losses, but with liability. All the money was coming in on the pitchers, more than before. Now, how do we do after this 2 or 3 week experiment? It was about even, or was small win, but I couldn't proceed with it because the perception was that it was wrong. So it's when you're an oddsmaker or bookmaker, I think it's always better to be reactive than proactive.
Huh? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because initially you thought it would be better to be proactive.
I've always thought it would be better to be proactive, but there's no reward for it. They don't give you any trophies for being the first guy to find something. They don't have any problems firing you if you got it wrong.
So, like in football, 10 years ago, it was proactive to go for it on fourth down.
Uh-huh.
And now it's...
Right, but coaches wouldn't do it because they'd lose their jobs.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now they would lose their job if they don't go for it.
That's
So
correct. That's a very good analogy, by the way. I'm going to have to steal that one.
It's okay. A very low percentage rate. You were talking about computer groups. They took over horse racing in
Yes.
some degree.
Mhm.
Do you have any...
Not to some degree, to almost the entire money paid out in horse racing.
All right. So, are they still out there? Are they still doing great? Would you have any comments on that?
They're still out there. They're doing better than ever. They're draining so much money out of it. The average person who goes to bed, he's not up against a take. He's against the smartest guys in the world. He's not losing 17% in a win pool. He's losing 25 or 30. He's not losing 25% in the exotic pools. He's losing 40. I mean, these guys have, even without rebates, they have turned the business on its edge. Somebody thinks that they can find something in horse racing. They're going up against 4 or 5 of the smartest gambling operations that ever existed. And they don't get thrown out because they're actually, like, and this is what we talked about. You have to do something for the people that are letting you bet. And they're churning so much money that it's beneficial for the racetracks to let these guys come in and bet.
Right, because the racetrack is just raking money off the top of the
Right.
pool. So
Yes.
the more money in the pool, the more the racetrack
Correct.
makes. But every one of those guys, when you talk to them, will tell you, "Oh, it's so much harder. The prices are getting down to where there's nothing left." And
I know. It's selective memory. Oh, in the old days, we used to be able to take all this money out and things like that. They're taking out more than they've ever taken out.
Yeah.
Now,
I think
their
they don't
ROI,
want-
their ROI isn't as high, Richard, but they are.
Yeah. And the other one that I love is AI is killing us.
Yeah.
All these new people
Yeah.
with AI, and
Yeah.
there's no money left in it anymore. They just don't want, more competition entering the field.
They've made it pretty hard for competition to enter the field because they really haven't left anything on the table for anybody that's not one of these 4 or 5 major groups. And plus with the rebates, they're also able to dabble in pools that weren't even worth dabbling in. Like they can dabble in win, play, show. They can dabble in play, show, which at one time there was no point in it. But the rebates that they're getting have changed a lot, although the rebates have been reduced, but they've got smarter. Now, the fact they have to win this money from somebody. So the fact that there's still horse players out there, that might be their problem, is that horse player demographic is so bad that eventually all the money will dry up.
And really, I think the blame for that lies directly with the horse racing industry, who has done nothing to promote it. I mean, now all the racetracks just want to have the track so they can open a casino.
Yes.
But if you go to Hong Kong and you go to the racetrack there, it's full of young people. Like, and they're there having a good time, partying, enjoying the races. Whereas, find a guy under 60 in a racetrack in the United States, and he probably made a wrong turn somewhere.
That's why when they had this Go Baby Go program where they were on TV and they were showing young, glamorous people drinking champagne on the rail, and this is the way to go to the races. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Not even at the Derby. So,
Yeah.
So you, it sounds like going to Del Mar to drink and not bet is the optimal play.
yeah.
Or
Actually,
the less bad play.
Even at $14 a beer, because I don't see. Look, we all bet a little, but we have no pretension that we're going to find a price that nobody else can find.
Yeah, but I should say, Bob, when he mentioned the computer group, there was one specific group that had been labeled the computer group back in about 1980 or late 70s with where Billy Walters was part of it, and Stan Thompson, who later went and started Pinnacle Sports, and and basically they just massacred bookmakers.
They did. Billy wasn't the major driver back then. He has amazing nerve. So when the federal indictments came down, Billy kept playing. The other guys decided maybe they needed to cool it, or Billy kept playing.
Yeah.
So when the acquittal thing came in, he was in charge. He might tell you different, but that's the way I remember it.
Well, he beat his first 3 or 4 federal indictments. The next one wasn't so fortunate for him.
Yeah, so this entire the FBI raided, I forget, dozens of people across the United States that were part of this group, and arrested them, and could not believe that they were actually just betting. They thought they had to be bookmakers because nobody could make that much money just betting on sports.
I didn't think the feds probably thought they had that good of a case because they brought it on the last day before the expiration date. I thought they did it more of an harassment thing. It did go to court. The computer group had Richard Wright for an attorney. He was probably maybe the best criminal attorney that I can think of in my long life here in Las Vegas. He was pretty funny, too, because they had a guy named Larry Ness who had, and Larry's a friend of mine, but he had turned state's evidence, and he had taken a deal. And Richard Wright, when he was summing up, he says, "Now we've heard from Larry Ness," and then he looks at the prosecution, "and we've heard from Elliot Ness." It was perplexing for the judge because the people who turned state's evidence had jail sentences, and the other people were acquitted.
Wow.
So eventually, everybody had to be acquitted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, turning state's evidence, presumably they had deals.
Yeah, but
often
they did.
The deal includes time.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was a hard case. These cases are really hard to prove in front of juries because good attorneys can confuse whether a person is a bettor or a bookmaker. It might be clear to us. It's not clear to everybody. In the case that involved the M Casino and Pinnacle, that was a massively confusing case because you had a...
That's not Cantor?
Cantor. Yeah, that's what I meant, not Cantor. That was a massively confusing case because you had some people that were bookmakers and agents and players, the same person.
Oh, one person would be all three.
Could be all three.
Oh.
So he could take a bet from one place, he can move it to another place. So he's a bookmaker, and he's also a player, and he was getting an affiliate or agent fee. So these cases are hard for juries to understand. Now, if if you're being tried for sports betting, you wouldn't want a jury of your peers. You wouldn't want anybody to know anything about bookmaking. You want to pick 12 people out of the street that had never made a sports bet before.
Now, Chris Andrews has been on this show. In his book, It Happened One Day, he mentioned you very complimentarily about basically you were both getting started at that time.
Correct.
Do you have any plans for writing a book and maybe saying something to find a way to compliment Chris Andrews?
Well, he did. He was the first guy to hire me to make odds, and when he was the youngest sportsbook director in the state at the Club Calneva, and his boss, or the owner at that time, a legendary figure called Warren Nelson, actually helped my career a lot. So I've said a lot of good things about Chris. He's,
so you don't owe him anymore.
I better say I do, because I like to eat out at Michael's.
Yes, he would have the power of the pen. Michael's is
He said his great contribution to your business was telling you to get a haircut.
That was his boss.
Oh.
He said, you should get a haircut and get rid of the beard. He says, nobody trusts anybody with a beard. I really didn't care, but then I thought I wanted to expand the business. So I went from I used to wear tuxedo pants and a Fila top and ballet shoes, right? So it was sort of
an eclectic combination.
Definitely. But I decided when I was going to turn this into business, I went the other way, and I wore a suit every day for like 20 years.
So for a while, you were running the biggest sports book in...
Well, I was making the odds for the Stardust.
Were you ever involved with Hilton?
Yes. I helped with the management study there. I helped with the design in the Hilton Superbook. And our company sold them the odds, and I had a great relationship, and still do, with Art Manteris. I sort of feel bad about him because when we had employees that didn't work out, I sent him over to there so he'd hire them to write tickets. And when he had somebody really good, I stole them.
Well, wait, but you weren't running a sports book, or you stole them to work in the odds making?
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah. Plus, I stole a secretary, and I stole a lady who became my general manager. That's, I knew what was going on over there. A funny story about we're designing this the Superbook. First of all, at that time, it cost $17 million. It's 1985 when it was being proposed, and everybody thought you were crazy. You could never get that much money. You couldn't get that much money out, You'd have to amortize it over years. It turned out like after a year and a half, they'd paid for it because, there was a lot of slots in there too, right? But what happened, we're having a break, and I needed a bathroom break when we were designing the book. So I just realized there were no men's rooms or ladies' rooms in the Superbook. The design was great. We had the TVs worked out, the bar, the deli. We had the way the office was set up, everything. People forgot men's rooms. And if you look at them, they're just an afterthought because they're actually on the door on the way in. That's right. That's right. That's because everything else is already designed.
Now, just today, I think it was, I saw, and maybe I read this wrong, but I think I read today that Caesars managed to lose $500 million in their sportsbook operations for the year.
Interactive operations. It's hard to parse all that out because I look at those statements, but they lost a lot of money. I think maybe the sportsbook was, if you parse out the sportsbook, it was probably about $320 million.
Oh, well, that's better.
How do you lose that much money with a...
cost of acquisition of the players is just too high. You're spending way too much money to get players compared to what they're losing. So the acquisition of players is too high.
I see.
So
they were offering $5,000 free bets on your first bet if you lost.
Yeah.
Which is pretty expensive if a significant number didn't stay.
Well, not only that, they were using expensive people to tell you that. Football players, movie stars, right?
Is that Jamie Foxx or is that MGM? Yeah, one of them had Jamie Foxx. I guess that was MGM. Had Jamie Foxx. Yeah.
The Mannings have been involved with
So
Caesars for a while.
They said they're going to cease their marketing sports books now. It'll be interesting to see how that falls out. Yeah. But, that's happened to casino business, too, where the cost of acquisition to getting players, whether it was put in rooms or shows or comps, turned out it was more than the players were spitting out. So eventually these, the only reason that somebody like these operations may not need to ever be viable from a sports betting operation is if they can roll that all into online casinos in the same jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And in some places you can't because it's correct, because it's illegal in that particular state today.
For now,
it is.
Yeah.
They think they'll probably have I know a lot of the thinking is they'll have a leg up when states decide they need more money. So now, whether that ever pays off for these companies that have burned through incredible amounts of money, and now the stock prices are reflecting the money they've burned through, it's hard to say.
But like DraftKings and FanDuel just burned an incredible amount to advertise DFS when they started.
They did.
So I don't.
Well, and they're still burning through a lot.
Not as much, but before every football game, every other commercial was one of those two.
Yeah.
And so now that you still see them, but not nearly so much.
Not so much. My feeling is that sports betting doesn't really churn out enough money on its own to be viable at the levels of spending that we've seen, whether it's advertising or technology or anything, and that it has to be towards a bigger picture or a bigger game. The sports, I think, will probably have, well, excluding California, Texas, and Florida, let's say we never had those states, right? They don't get legalized in the next 3 years. Just let's say that. We'll probably reach peak sports betting in 3 years in the rest of the states. This is not a upward trajectory that just keeps on going.
What do you think about the fact that here in Nevada, you can bet on your phone now, but you have to actually go in the casino to put the money on, the other states, you can just load it from your phone.
I don't think that's a big of a detriment. It's pretty hard to believe that somebody that lives in Nevada isn't within reach of or doesn't have a regular casino that they go to. I don't think that's that onerous.
But what if you want to keep your face and your ID a secret?
Okay.
So
you can't do that on a Sportsbook app.
Well, you can't. You can. You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think. The Nevada model has lost the plot in the rest of the country, which was originally to draw people into bricks and mortars operations. Right. That's why sportsbooks existed. Now they became profit centers on their own, but that took a lot of years. They were basically a come on, right? Of course, other states either don't have the bricks or mortars, or they don't have the availability every place. There's two opinions on this. I've talked to a couple of real top bookmakers before the Super Bowl about this. One thinks that it would really help to have, and they both work in large casinos. One thinks that it would really help to have sign-ups, remote sign-ups, and the other one doesn't think that. They think they've tapped into all that business anyway. So it's two different thoughts on that.
Now, Sheldon Adelson was opposed to any kind of online gaming and he had a major voice now, and he's passed now, so that voice is not there. Has that changed? Did that change anything insofar as
It might change it in other states, but I'm really not qualified to say if it's going to change Nevada. We'll get to remote registration. Almost got to it a month ago or two. It'll happen. Just,
within the next few months? Is that what you said?
No, it almost happened a couple of months ago. It'll happen in the next year or two, I'm sure.
You think online gaming will come to Nevada?
That's a different issue. But I think it probably will too. But right now, I don't think it's probably not beneficial for Nevada right now.
Now, Spanky, I assume there's only one Spanky, in the first weekend of April is having a bet bash here and I assume you've at least been invited. There will be supposed to be very famous people of all over the sports betting industry. Are you planning to attend, or can you say?
I'll be there. I changed my plans to be there. Normally, I would be going back to, normally I would be betting baseball futures and go back to Thailand on March 15th, but that's not happening. So I delayed returning to my world headquarters in Phuket until after Bet Bash. It's a chance for me to see a lot of people that I haven't seen for a long time, or some that I've never met, and I don't have to go anywhere. It's in my backyard.
So you're able to bet from Thailand?
Well, yes, but I mean that's different places, not any place in the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can bet U.S. sports if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the offshore places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
I didn't realize you were living in Thailand. So.
Well, I'm okay. I
thought he was across the table from us today.
Well, I've been living pre-pandemic, I was 2 months here, 2 months there, back and forth. But between quarantines and lockdowns and that life and me getting older, I'm not sure if that life is going to resume. I'll probably be in one place for a longer amount of time. I'm sort of one of these guys. I'm happy where I am. If I don't buy a round-trip ticket, I will just stay wherever I am.
So, you've been a consultant for umpteen years. Is there any chance you're going to get back into consulting?
No. I'm pretty happy with my life right now. There is a fair amount of stress that goes with being in the sports business, whether you're a player, a bookmaker, or a consultant. And
some owners get ticked if they lose $8 million on a game.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of... I didn't like to answer the phone a lot of Mondays.
Yeah, I'll bet. And the Mondays you were looking forward to the call, nobody called you.
That's the way it works. So to preempt those calls, we came up with an idea called the Manager's Report, and it came out every Monday at 11 o'clock, where we took a survey of books, one in Lake Tahoe, one in Reno, one in downtown, and one on the Strip, or a couple on the Strip, that didn't phone up to complain. We took a survey. We sent it out in the Manager's Report, basically everybody did for the week, and people used to wait for that thing to come in through the fax machine back then, because if they had a bad week, they're running right up to the boss with it. Everybody else had a bad week. If they had a good week, went in the trash. So,
on the occasional time that you had a bad week, but all the others had a good week, that must have been a lot of fun.
Then they didn't want to show it to their boss if they had a bad week and everybody else had a good week. But they gave them the opportunity to do what they wanted to do. They sort of like that.
Yeah.
Well, self-preservation has a lot to do in the gambling business. You know, the motivation to always be the best you can is trumped by the motivation to keep your job.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they throw out players for winning that aren't winning players.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get fired for throwing a guy out. You'll get fired if the guy wins too much money, like Kerry Packer, right, at the MGM.
Yeah. I agree. So that's probably just not gambling. That's in most businesses in life. The reason there are not a lot of risk takers other than owners in business is because self-preservation of your job, of your car payment, your kids going to school and everything trumps maybe risk. It's probably as well. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
The Hilton still had and still does, although it's called the Westgate now, I guess. They had the football contest where it was a big entry fee, and you played against the line, and it attracted a high percentage of the best sports handicappers. It was a matter of pride if you could do well in that contest. Were you at all involved in setting that up or making it grow?
No, that was Art Manteris'. The Super Contest was Art's brainchild. We really didn't have anything to do with any of the contests around town. We did shape some different types of bets, but the contests weren't one of them. The contests for a lot of places were just marketing, like the ones the station casinos ran. It was to get a lot of people to come in because you always had to come in every week. So that was a sort of a different animal. Arts was appealed to people who had $1,500, which at that time was sort of a lot, and then the $5,000 contest. And it appealed to a different group. But because of that, it was sort of considered a high rollers contest. They got immense publicity from it.
And you set the line, or your group set the line, and so whether they were using it for a contest or just regular bettors, for the most part, didn't affect how you set the line.
No, because the contest line would come out after people had already been betting in the line for 2 or 3 days. So by then it was. Now they call it price discovery. Back then we used to call it find the right number.
Yeah, so the lines you come out with on Monday are low limits, and you hope to let the pros bang them into shape, and then you raise the limits.
That's correct. That's how it works in theory. It works actually pretty close to that. it's surprising. One thing I learned about betting exchanges is it's amazing how fast you can get market discovery with very low limits. It's almost mind-boggling that you can put stuff up for $200-$300 and get to price discovery pretty efficiently. There are a lot of people that access these exchanges that are just take pride in their work and don't like to gamble. A lot of the work in baseball, the algorithmic work, not a lot of it, practically all of it, is done by people that don't gamble at all. Just baseball people.
Wow.
You think of baseball prospectus and fan graphs, those aren't gamblers. Those are guys that like baseball data. Now, gamblers use it because it's good. Just like the Pomeroy numbers, right? I mean, he's not a bettor. He's a basketball fan. So a lot of this work has been done by people that don't gamble, but gamblers are using that for their basis. And so in the betting exchanges, there's a lot of people willing to bet small money on prices that are off, which helps the line get set. When you're a bettor, it's always a war in your own brain. Should you take a dime now, or are you worried about losing the number? And then, yeah, you can get 5 dimes 2 days later, but how many numbers are you going to miss? And that's a conundrum for bettors.
Well, yeah, that's in life. That's always the very good. If you had to do it over again, how would you have changed your life?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. If I had to do it over again, I'm not a guy that really looks back, and I probably should have finished. I should have gone to Dartmouth and finished school. That would have changed my life a total different direction. That's the only regret I ever have.
But do you think you would have ended up here doing?
No,
yeah,
no, I wouldn't have. But there's other lives besides gambling.
Sure.
Yeah, but there's not.
So I'm told anyway.
I've heard that, but yet you're on a lot of lists as the best of, or in the top 10, or in the top 50, or whatever the lists are. And had you become a CPA, you might not have made that list.
No, if I had run my father's electrical contracting company, I wouldn't have had any fame. Yeah, the regret I have is when I was younger, I should have been more gracious. That's the regret I have.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
you do seem to have grown out of that, because today you appear extremely gracious.
Oh, thank you.
So we're fascinated by this conversation. This is the first time I think I've had to prompt you, Bob, that you have not done the commercials.
The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more such game than anyone else has. The March promotion is free play with a kicker, which goes to players who already received mailers. Pick up your usual free play Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday starting February 28th, and you'll receive an identical amount on Friday or Saturday of the same week. Pick up all 8 free plays, and on Monday, March 28th, you'll receive double the amount of free play. Overall, you pick up 2.5 times your normal amount of free play if you make all the pickups.
Hey guys, this is Colin from blackjackapprenticeship.com, and if you're serious about card counting, I'd encourage you to check out the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. It has the training tools you'll need to beat the game, like our comprehensive video course and our training suite, so you can learn each skill and virtually test yourself before ever stepping foot in a casino. It also includes the tools you'll need to succeed, like our pro betting software, casino database, results tracking software, and access to a community of like-minded Advantage players to network with in our members forum and chat room software. You can find out more at blackjackapprenticeship.com.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the Gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Super Triple Play Jackpots, and it's a game for those who wish to gamble. It requires 7 coins per line. The first extra coin bumps up all the values for the 4 of a kinds. The second extra coin provides you with a wheel spin whenever you end up with such 4 of a kind. Since these quads only come about every 420 hands or so, It's a heaven or hell experience. If you don't get many quads today, you will wish you stayed home. If you do get a lot of quads today, this is a fun game. If you come across a super triple play jackpot game and you don't know the return, you can enter it into regular video poker software and it will come out to be 130% or so. But you take that number, multiply by 5 and divide by 7, and that will give you the actual return. All right, we are going back to Roxy Roxborough. So we want to thank you, Roxy, for being here. At the end of our show, we have a recommended section. So, Richard, do you have anything to recommend to our listeners today?
I do not. I have no recommendation this week, so...
Well, then I recommend that I go next.
Boy, Richard, you've been doing too many shows. If you
well,
can't
we just
come up
did a
with
show.
something.
We recorded a show 2 days ago,
Okay.
and I always forget to plan for this. and
Okay.
I haven't read any new book in the last 2 days.
Okay.
Well, my book is one that's over 100 years old. It's called Pudd'nhead Wilson by Mark Twain. It's an 1894 book that involves two young boys, one a slave because he is 1/32 black, but looks all white, and the other a member of the aristocracy in 1830 Missouri, in a town where slavery was a part of life. They were born in the same house on the same day. The mother of the boys, a 1/16 black slave, was charged with raising both boys because the mother of the aristocracy boy changed. They were so similar in experience, the only way you could tell them apart was the way they were dressed. The rich son was dressed in silks, and the slave was dressed in slave's clothes. After seeing fellow slaves in the household sold down the river because they were caught thieving, Roxy, the mother, decides to change the clothes on the boys at age of 6 months, so her son grows up as a rich man, and the actual rich man's son grows up as a slave. This will protect her son, she thinks. The end of the book involves a trial for murder. Readers know who the real guilty party is before the trial starts, but it's still very interesting how it unfolds. One thing to keep in mind, the N word is used repeatedly by all the characters in the book, both white and black. This is offensive to modern ears, but apparently was common in antebellum Missouri. If this is going to bother you, don't read the book. So, Roxy Roxborough, do you have a recommended for our audience?
I have a recommendation, but it's more about about experience than books. So, I've lived in Las Vegas for 50 years, and I'm guilty of this. But within 3 or 4 hours drive from here, we have some of the greatest places in the world to visit. And sometimes in our business, we just get too busy and we say, well, we'll go next week, or we'll go next week. And we and you spend years not going to places like Death Valley and the Grand Canyon,
Sedona,
Goldfield, old mining towns, and
Venice Beach probably doesn't make the list.
wouldn't make mine, but but I think that's we really, well, we can drive 45 minutes and get away from it all, up to Charleston, and we can be in the middle of the desert in less than an hour. But there's, if you want to see stars, but this is a terrific place to live. If you just get in that car and you go a couple hours, it's amazing how much we have to see.
I agree. Very well. Good idea and well put.
I'm glad you said that, because I sort of give that advice to my kids and my nephews and things like that. That the ones that live in LA and they've never driven to the Grand Canyon. But I'm glad you said that, because I have never been to Death Valley, and I keep saying, we should drive out there one day, and so maybe you will spur me to finally do that.
It's probably a more comfortable visit in February than it would be in July.
Yes. Yes.
It's more crowded in February.
I'll bet it is. All right. So thank you, Roxy Roxborough.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.